Hi, I'm Diana Yao, your host on the Emerging Markets Tech Startups podcast. While traveling to over 90 countries, I was inspired by the entrepreneurial spirit across startup communities in Africa, Latin America, Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. On the show, we bring you stories from entrepreneurs, startup ecosystem innovators, and investors. We discuss what makes these markets culturally and historically unique, local trends, local challenges consumers and founders face, and the opportunities. Let's get started. Today, we're exploring Nigeria in Western Africa. Nigeria has a population of over 200 million people, making it the largest country in all of Africa. We're talking to Kola Aina, who's the founder of Ventures Platform. Ventures Platform invested in some of the most exciting companies on the continent today, including Paystack, who's considered the Square of Africa. So Kola, welcome to the show. I'd love if you can start off to tell us who you are and what does your organization Venture Platform do?
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Kola. I'm from Nigeria, and I'm a technology entrepreneur and investor. I lead the team at Ventures Platform, founded that 4 years ago. We're an early stage discovery fund that invests in companies building the future of Africa through technology and innovation.
That's a great summary. And we'd love to get into venture platforms and more editions of how you guys help. But first, help us understand, why is Nigeria interesting? Can you share maybe a fun fact or some stats about the market?
Yeah, I think Nigeria is interesting for many reasons. So first off, Africa as a continent, 60% of the population in Africa is under the age of 25. And there's no country in the continent that represents that more than Nigeria. We have a very youthful population, and some economists would tell you that in decades to come, Nigeria and Africa particularly is probably going to supply the world's youth population. We're already seeing that, with Nigerians representing some of the most highly educated ethnic groups in the US, for instance. So another fun fact about Nigeria that I often point out is the fact that we export a lot of talent as a country, and that creates an incredible volume of remittance flows back into the country, but also does some damage to the availability of talents that we have locally. Outside of that, Nigeria also probably has one of the fastest growing startup ecosystems. Nigeria was responsible for 50% of all of all venture capital investing in startups in 2019. I believe that was about $500 million in venture capital, half of what was raised across the continent. And so it's probably the premier startup ecosystem in the continent. I know some other countries would want to compete with that statistic, but it is what it is. Numbers don't lie.
And they can't. I mean, how large is the market that 50% of the investment went to Nigeria in terms of people?
We've got a population that, depending on what you're looking at, there's anywhere between, it's forecasted to be about 200 million people. It's growing really fast in the sense that there's forecasts that by 2050, the population will be double what it is today. So it's fast growth rates where you're seeing a decline in population numbers in other parts of the world.
So it's going to be bigger than the US by 2050.
It is forecasted to be bigger than the US by 2050.
Yeah, definitely large populations is a huge thing investors look for in terms of demand, market adoption. So it's very, very promising. You talked about a large 60% of Nigerians' population is under 25. Can you tie that to why that matters for entrepreneurship, founders, the startup ecosystem?
Well, I think the reason that matters, first off, is ideally speaking, it should suggest access to talent, right? But unfortunately, we have also the government here over the years have underinvested in education, and so this is why companies like Candela and the many other versions of Andela hubs and incubators play a really important role, because these organizations now serve as a sort of a band-aid to what the traditional educational system is meant to do. And so for startups, ideally speaking, as we start to solve for that, it should sort of give you a guarantee of access to talent, all things being equal. It also sort of speaks to the fact that you have a growing population that as the economy grows or improves, should continue to spend, and so there's some guarantees of a market that should be available for companies that are building for this continent. And then if you start to think about things like healthcare and the like, it shows the potential that the market holds, right? And so I think you certainly want to pay attention to that statistic. I mean, yes, for startups have to be a lot more circumspect in terms of just assuming that a 200 million population translates to a 200 million market size. Not necessarily, right? Because there is also significant degrees of poverty, and so which is why, in my mind, the kind of innovations that companies should look to build are what I like to call market creating innovations. So innovations that sort of create new markets and sort of right size products and services in ways that would allow segments of society that ordinarily wouldn't afford those goods and services to now be able to afford them. And a classic example is what we've seen I'll give two examples. One example is what we've seen in telecoms, right? Where until less than a decade ago, there were no telecom companies or mobile phone companies here, because the assumption was Africans couldn't afford mobile communication. But by rethinking the way you delivered service, the underlying technology, the pricing modules, the contract modules, companies like Celtel and now MTN have been able to grow their subscription base by the millions. I believe at my last check in Nigeria, MTN has somewhere between 60 to 70 million subscribers. If you think about on the downside, on the other end, if you think about a company like PiggyVest, right? Before PiggyVest, for instance, millennials didn't have access to financial services or savings products, right? But by rethinking how how a millennial could save, today PiggyVest, one of our portfolio companies, has seen their subscriber base grow to over 1 million, which is significant for this market. And so really, it's the lens that you take to approach the market really has to change from innovations that merely improve products and services to innovations that actually create and enable new markets. And that's really the opportunity in this side of the pond.
I wanted to add to the initial question, why does youth matter? On top of that, for example, I work in the internet access space, and we know that a large population that are unconnected are older. So when we talk about adoption of these new internet products, the majority of the people who are open to trying it and to using it and even paying for it are the youth and not necessarily the older population.
Absolutely, and I think you see that in the numbers and of users that the large companies like Facebook and Google and the social media platforms have. The adoption of cryptocurrencies, for instance, Nigeria is one of the the most active countries for trading in cryptocurrencies. You have that youthful population that is and typically early adopting. That ideally should cost less to convert and educate, and is more open to risk and trying new things, and that presents a compelling opportunity. Once as a startup you can figure out how to get the share of wallet, the opportunity is tremendous.
This youth population connected with what I've heard about Nigerians' hustler mentality. Can you talk about how these two like mindsets, if we were building a product for Nigeria tomorrow, really helps, drive the ecosystem of startups.
Yeah, so I think, a few things drive that, right? So by our very nature, the average, and this might come off as stereotypical, but I think the Nigerian is very, 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 the average Nigerian is a go-getter, where we aim high, and there's a certain aggression in terms of getting things done that just comes with the culture and the way of life. Outside of that as well, because the country has experienced. We've just come off. We've barely been we had bouts of military rule, and folks have seen. We had a civil war just less than 50 years ago. So there's still a lot of the remnants of that creates a certain kind of resilience. I also think because you've had record of large underemployment of the youth, and so there's a large chunk of people that pretty much have had to figure out ways to fend for themselves, and that lends itself to entrepreneurship. So the real challenge, however, is identifying the entrepreneurs that have a broader ambition that goes beyond just survival, right? Because from a venture capital standpoint, you don't want to fund a lifestyle business. You want to fund a highly scalable business. And I think over the last 5 years, we have seen a massive improvement in the quality and ambition of the entrepreneurs that are building companies in this market. And I couldn't be more proud of the folks who are building companies today.
It's amazing to hear. I think I heard a stat somewhere that on average, a Nigerian would have, do you know the number? Average side hustles, whether it's a day-to-day person.
Yeah, well, the side hustles are popular here. I mean, I don't know a specific number, but yes, most people have multiple side hustles. Everyone is trying something, and it's just a really entrepreneurial society. I mean, the city of Lagos is a city of hustlers, right? Everyone's doing something. Everyone's trying to survive, and all of that energy just drives, innovation. And really, I mean, we operate in really harsh environments, right? And that forces. I mean, I recently found out that in the UK, you finally are able to, when you're doing a bank to interbank transfer on mobile apps, for instance, they only recently launched instant account verification. Well, we had that years ago in Nigeria, right? And so there's fintech companies, for instance, built some of the most resilient platforms because they've had to, right? Because you have to deal with instability of power, instability of connectivity, and so that creates a certain kind of company and a certain kind of entrepreneur. As we say, if you survive in Lagos, you're likely to survive anywhere.
Is that an actual saying? Dang.
It is a saying, yes.
I'm going to have to test my luck. I've been meaning to go to Nigeria. You know this. So I got to put myself over there, and then I'll feel confident to survive anywhere else.
Yeah, once all of this is over, we need to make that happen.
So this also brings another question. What are 3 local problems, opportunities startups can solve? Like you talked about these harsh conditions.
Yeah, so I think first off, broadly speaking, I think startups need to look to solve for non-consumption, right? Non-consumption of anything and everything, right? And all around us, that's all we see. It's either the non-consumption of education, the non-consumption of, and by non-consumption, I mean populations that would ordinarily want to access population, but for various reasons like the costs or access or what have you, simply cannot access what they need, not what they want, right? What they need. And so it's really about companies building painkillers, not vitamins. And I think the critical sectors that we're focused on, and we're excited to partner with entrepreneurs around, are things like education. Nigeria has, I'm not proud of this statistic, but there's about 14 million out of school children, for instance. And even where you've got children in school, the quality of education isn't great, and the flexibility isn't where it ought to be. We've got the pandemic going on now, and folks, a large number of schools are still not able to provide continuous education for kids, right? And so education is one, healthcare is another. Again, there's been an underinvestment in healthcare, and I still think we've seen advancements in financial inclusion and financial services in general, but I still think there's room to provide more financial access and also improve the quality of life of folks through financial products. So not just being able to transfer money, but being able to have access to insurance, have access to investment products, right? And things like that are still opportunities that people can build around in this market. Talking about healthcare, again, I think we've had a run across different verticals with companies building apps. I really look forward to folks that would really build hard technology, right? So be it biotech or technology that is practical and is not necessarily just a mobile app, right? I think we've had our fair run of apps, and we need to build some indigenous hard technology as well.
So I heard education, healthcare, financial inclusion. These are also things across the world we're trying to solve for. But what are the unique challenges? Maybe talk about financial inclusion, because I know there's a really high percentage of people that are unbanked in Nigeria.
Yeah, I think some of the peculiar challenges are, so one is really connectivity, right? So this is not a market where you just slap a mobile app on a phone and you can start transferring. There's probably anywhere between, I would argue, and I use this loosely, anywhere between 20 to 40% of the population that just doesn't have access, right? Or has under access, right? And so you've got to think, which is why platforms like USSD, SMS are still sort of important platforms here. There's a lot of fintech transactions that happen on USSD in this market. There's also challenges around fraud, right? Which I think you find in every market, but you also have in this market. And then I think education, right? Because again, tied to the challenge of poor education, awareness and just know-how for certain portions of the population is still sort of limited. And then we have a really interesting regulatory landscape as well, where that companies have to sort of solve for. There are fintech ecosystems that are extremely progressive in Baltics, and I admire those ecosystems and really hope that we can continue to see advancement in our own regulatory landscape as well.
Thanks for highlighting that. I always see problems as potential opportunities, so I'm so glad you called those explicitly out. I'd love to talk a bit more about Ventures platform. So what problems is your organization solving in this market uniquely when you guys first started?
Our original thesis was, can we provide hassle-free capital that is not exploitive to the entrepreneurs, gives a fair deal, but much more than capital, also provides access to our network, because we have built businesses, operating businesses, working with corporates, and so we figured that if we provided access to capital that we considered hassle-free, fair in terms of terms, and combined that with our network and our relationships and our experience, we could really help companies scale in solving some of these problems. And so that was really it for us. It was really started out from a recognition that there was very limited access to hassle-free capital that had context. And by context, I mean local capital. So I do not believe that anyone can come and solve our problems for us. I believe that we have to solve our problems with the right partnerships globally. And so, one of the things that we wanted to represent was really local capital that could partner with you early on and sort of help you as you go. Since then, we've partnered with over 30 companies, and really excited to see that a number of our companies are leading their various categories in different verticals. We then sort of advanced to recognize that there was need to sort of invest in building pipeline, and so we spun off our nonprofit, our foundation that does a lot of work in building pipeline, and we also built one of the first I'll use the term full stack co-working spaces with living space, workspace, and just creative spaces that allows for collaboration and sharing as well. And so it's really a platform that seeks to catalyze innovation and entrepreneurship, riding on three pillars: one, access to capital; two, capacity building; and three, access to infrastructure.
I love Venture's platform bringing together those three things, because I know there are specific institutions solving just one piece of that. And without the three and probably more combined together, it's very hard to bring end-to-end success for entrepreneurs, especially in ecosystems that you had mentioned maybe are a bit harsh. So I'm curious, maybe out of your portfolio, what are the top three you're most proud of?
Well, that's a tough question to answer. We're proud of to be honest, we're proud of the entire portfolio. I mean, we love what, so in fintech, we love what Paystack's done. Paystack has essentially become the infrastructure for a vast number of companies, right? If you didn't have Paystack, there are many companies that just couldn't exist today because they simply power so many traditional businesses as well as the new crop of startups, payments infrastructure, and they do it so brilliantly. Just beautiful technology that works and that's so critical to the growth of many companies. So we're proud of them. We're proud of what PiggyVest is doing. Now enabling over 1 million young people save and invest. More recently, companies like Trove giving access to financial services at a global scale for young people. Thrive Agri is also sort of a brilliant company that we're working with that's now working with close to 50,000 smallholder farmers, helping to increase their scale using technology and giving them access to markets. We love what MDAS is doing, building a network of medical diagnostic centers around the country. We're fortunate, we're spoiled for choice. Our founders just really are doing incredible work, and we can't wait to see what they do in the future.
You're like a proud father when someone asks you, which is your favorite child?
Yeah, it's a tough one to answer because I think there's so many companies that are doing really well. Yeah,
I can totally understand, and all of those companies I've read are doing really exciting things. So why is this mission so important to you and your story?
I'm mostly fortunate to be able to live anywhere I want, right? I was educated in the US, I've spent time in the UK, but I choose to sort of make my primary domicile Nigeria, right? Because it's home first. I love it here, and so I reckon if I would live in Nigeria, then I want to be a part of making it a better country, and just really building the future of what is possible. And I don't know of a better way to do that than funding the companies that will build the future of the continent and the country, the country first and the continent. And so for me, it's really a mission to build the future of the continent, a future that'll be better than the one that exists today, but also one that better than the one I lived in for my kids. And so it's a really personal mission. And this is just one way of doing that, as well as, creating fantastic outcomes, financial outcomes for me and investors as well.
Kola for president 2024.
Well, look, it's a really personal mission, to be honest. And when you have options and you choose to do certain things, you must always remember why you started, and it's never in doubt for us. And I think this belief sort of translates to all our team members as well. Really incredible people that could do whatever they want, but they choose to sort of work with the entrepreneurs, either at the earliest stage at our foundation, or at the stage we invest, which is sort of discovery, right? And so we're taking the first bet in most of the companies we support. And we do that because we believe that they're going to be the future of the continent.
And this is the type of internalization of this mission that keeps dedication. Because as you can imagine, in the startup ecosystem, some people are in it just to get rich, to be the next Facebook, Google, or Jumia, whatever it is. But I'm hearing from you, this is a long-term game for you, where you understand it's not the short-term wins that is going to change the economy.
No, it's a marathon, not a race. If I wanted to, if I wanted quick wins, there's several other things I could do. Like I said, I ran, and I still have interest in operating businesses that generate cash flows and are doing really well in the near term. But I think this is important work, and it's work that would live beyond us. This companies, again, this is why I say we're not funding companies that you will describe as vitamins, right? We're funding painkillers, critical companies that really determine if there will be a drought in Nigeria in the next 5 years or not, right? Companies that determine if a young lady that wants to start a business because she doesn't have a job will be able to take payments online and grow her business or not, right? Companies that make it able for folks to access diagnostics as opposed to just visiting a pharmacy and self-medicating. And so this is really critical work. But at the same time, we're not doing it for free as well. We're seeing great returns on our portfolio. So I think the best kind of good is the good that you do and also sort of make a living doing it.
Yes. And I always say win-wins are the ones that win at the end of the day, not win-lose. So you're keeping a sustainable model. So I know we talked a bunch about the startup ecosystem already, but let's dive in a bit deeper. So give me an idea of what you think the top 3 most successful local startups in Nigeria are. I
think the mission that Andela started with is an important one. A lot has changed in what they're doing, and I know of recent they've been catching a lot of flack for it. Yeah, so Andela essentially is a talent accelerator focused on software engineers. So they train software engineers, and then they put them on projects with global companies, exposing them significantly. It's pretty much like a university degree for software engineers, except you don't get a degree, but real world experience. And what Andela has done has really shown what the talent that is in the Nigerian ecosystem, right? Before Andela, global companies would hardly look at Nigerian developers, right? But I think it's now clear to everyone that Nigerian developers are toe-to-toe with developers anywhere if given the opportunity. And the mission of the company is really a powerful one that I like. It talks about talent is evenly distributed, opportunity isn't. I probably butchered it, but that's, in essence, that's what it means, right? So yeah, Andela is one of my faves. I absolutely love what Paystack has done. Absolutely love it, right? It's built one of the most admired companies. As a matter of fact, look, there's been a couple surveys that have gone out by various people in the past year, and they've asked for the most admired companies or most loved startups. And very proud to say 2 of our portfolio companies make it to the tops every time. one being Paystack and the other being PiggyVest. So, if I had to name three companies, one would be Andela, the second would be Paystack, Stripe, which is often called Stripe for Africa, and recently got Stripe as an investor as well, and PiggyVest, three companies that I really admire.
Two of the three so far are in your portfolio, and the other first, Andela, I'm sure you guys are working closely with. So you're winning the market.
Well, we're decent run so far.
The last section, what are the three challenges in the startup ecosystem in Nigeria specifically?
Number one would be the lack of depth of local capital and the need to rely on international capital that unfortunately sets a very different standard when investing in our ecosystems, which are a double standard that I find unfair. So, if you had more local capital, you wouldn't have to, worry about those double standards as much. So I do think there's a need for investors and LPs and capital providers to support more local VCs or VCs that have local context, because it makes a world of difference. The second thing that I would mention as a real challenge is really the need to improve the ease of doing business and the regulatory landscape in general. And that's really a local challenge, right? I think that's super important. The third bit that I would mention are challenges that I think are beyond the ecosystem itself, but are more country issues, right? Which is where you have a large youthful population, you don't have enough of the talents that companies often need, and that's a result of the underinvestment in education over the years, and which is why the Nigerian diaspora remains very important, because it's a great source of talent. But not just the Nigerian diaspora, our friends and partners are from around the world that either want to work in companies here, partner with companies here, invest in companies here, and by so doing can support with their experiences and their global networks. So yeah, to recap it again, insufficient local capital, or either by individuals or local funds. The third would be the regulatory landscape and the business landscape. And the third would be country level problems that impact the ecosystem, like education, security, and things like that. And I did mention a few ways that I think our friends from around the world can support.
Yeah. On number one, how is venture capital tackling and bringing the ecosystem? Like, how did you convince local investors to start investing in startups?
Yeah, so I think that's something it's a problem, but it's something that we're seeing an improvement in. Since we launched, there have been close to 3 or 4 other local funds, micro funds that have launched. And, there are a few more in the pipeline that we're hearing about. I think as we start to see great success stories and an increasing number of exits and liquidity events, I think you would see a ramp up in local participation, right? It's a new asset class here, and folks are still learning and getting used to the asset class in general. But I do expect that we would continue to see improvements in that direction.
What are the type of investors that are investing in the ecosystem? Is it corporates? Like, I know telcos and banks tend to be initially the first ones. So who did you end up convincing?
So we are there's some corporates, there are family offices. I mean, kind of the usual bunch. The most unusual is really just HNIs, like wealthy corporate professionals, right? That would invest themselves, because oftentimes they haven't set up their family offices per se. But we're also seeing Adventure Platform, particularly, we are looking to collaborate more with corporates. And I think an increasing interest we're seeing is from the diaspora, or just folks internationally that are really keen to tap into what the opportunity that Nigeria presents. Because we're a microfund, so we would take individual HNIs as long as HNI LPs, as long as they sort of pass our DD process. And so, we've seen everything from angels to HNIs to family offices and corporates.
Two last quick questions, because I know you have to go mentor startups and founders. One, major milestones in the local startup ecosystem.
People often talk about Jumia as a milestone, and I guess it's a milestone for some people, but I think, look, Jumia has played an important role from an e-commerce perspective. There's a debate as to whether it's an African startup or not an African startup. I debate I don't like to get involved in, but yeah, that's probably a milestone that some would celebrate. I think the founding of Paystack is a major milestone because, if you talk to several entrepreneurs, they would tell you that they wouldn't. Several digital entrepreneurs, they would tell you that their company wouldn't exist at the scale that it does today if Paystack didn't exist. We also have InterSwitch, a local payment company, first company to hit $1 billion valuation. I think that's an important one. And I think as well, over the last 3 to 4 years, we started to see a lot of local VC activity. That for me is an important milestone because context is really important in these emerging markets, right? And so as you start to see more local venture capitalists, more folks like Ventures Platform, like Microtraction, sort of backing local companies, I think that is something that is worth recognizing. The last thing I would mention is really the incredible work that Y Combinator and the other accelerators of repute like 500 Startup and Techstars, about five years ago when they really started scaling their African investments, that really helped to drive the momentum of the ecosystem. And, I think it's something worth crediting.
Kola, you've presented Nigeria to be such a huge opportunity, and we know it is. Population's going to grow to 400 million by 2050, youth population. If people want to help, what are one or three things people can help with?
I think if you're interested in the ecosystem, the best way to, I always tell people, put your money where your mouth is, right? Look for an angel group or micro VC to either invest in and maybe mentor while you invest, right? That's one. The second way I think you can help is not believe all the stereotypes that you read and hear, because majority of the stereotypes are not necessarily true. And even when it comes to fraud and whatnot, there's a very small sliver of people that do those things. And unfortunately, the media very often just sort of scales it up like it's an entire population of people looking to scheme people. And Nigeria does have a bad rap when it comes to that. And so I think folks that would really want to help should be repulsed by those stereotypes. And I think the third thing is the next time you want to do a project, hire a Nigerian developer. They make some really great developers, reach out, mentor one, be a friend, and hire them. Yeah, those are my three asks if I had them. Yeah.
On the last one, would they go straight to Andela?
Yeah, they could go to Andela as well. They could go to Andela because the ones in Andela are vetted, and you can be pretty sure of where they're coming from. But I think, but I think you can also check out GitHub. There's a Nigerians, the Nigerians sort of rank really high on there.
Amazing. Kola, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, but also letting the world know how big of an opportunity Nigeria is. One, Nigeria is so lucky to have your dedication, and the world is. So stay alive forever.
Thank you very much. I enjoy talking to you, and I look forward to listening to this.
Thanks for joining us today on the Emerging Markets Tech Startup Show. If you have questions, comments, requests for me to cover an emerging market, or want to be connected with today's guest, leave me a comment in the reviews or find me on Twitter @DianaYao. Until next time,